I think we're ready to roll. Just check. All right, we must be live. All right, welcome to my Sunday variety. Today we're going to be looking at some chess that speaks for itself, and what's a better game to start with than the game from last night? Well, for me, last night probably was during the day for some people. Niemann versus Caruana from the US Championship, which I have to admit I had no idea what was going on until I decided to go find some games to look at for today. So this was kind of serendipitous, if I do say so myself. Starting out with this game, we have our Nimzo. And also, I saw the end of this game live. I realized that there's like an ongoing live chat during the tournament, and people say the most outlandish things in that chat, let me tell you. So this is all some mainline theory. I don't know if I have anything really special to say with the theory at this point. It's all pretty much like normal. I guess maybe the first thing to look at might be why not play this move? What would the line be here? This might be interesting to look at. I think I've seen some games where they play Queen E7, but that might not be in this line. I think the Queen E7 and intending Rook D8 might only be when there's a Queen on D1 still. So there might be that. I'm not sure. If I just whip out the opening book real quick, it'll tell us what people have done here. Let me edit this so you guys can at least see the opening book. Scoop this up a little bit. Cover my face. You guys don't need to see that anyway. Hold on. Okay, that worked. I think. So you can at least see the top move here. Maybe I'll extend it a bit. All right, so let's try to get the top three moves on there. Yeah, that's right. So C5's been played. Pretty normal move. I think this is probably, since it's the main move by far, but there's not that many games in this position. I imagine it's just the most intuitive move. There could be other moves, but C5 is definitely very normal. Usually black is trying to equalize or even create some chances by potentially trading off all the pawns in the center. So C5 is normal. This is threatening. Bishop takes f6, but then there's d4, which prevents bishop takes f6. So this is an interesting position. It looks like black hasn't scored any wins according to the light chess database, which is not up to date. Not very up to date. But it looks like an interesting and playable position. So this could be an option for both sides. I'm not sure. Looks like black has occasionally tried g5, which looks a little exotic. Looks like in some recent games they played 96 and 97. Most recent was in 2020. And in that game they chose 96. Okay, so this is all just like a big what if. I don't really know. Anyway, this is definitely a logical recapture. It doesn't allow black to do anything too interesting. So if you're going for control and you don't necessarily want to swing for the fences, this makes some sense. Just staying the course. This position has been played a lot more often than the bishop h4 position. So here we have just 36 with the top move, and black could also play c6. How do these moves compare c6 and d takes c4? Like let's pretend I wanted to learn this opening and play it, right? I'd want to know what's the difference between these options. Aside from the obvious, like what's going to happen next. Maybe the first thing is, does black really even care if they take here? I think the answer is no, because they could take like this and activate their bishop. To me, this seems very, very fine. Like maybe e3 because, I mean, what else? Bishop f5. This looks pretty even to me. Unless there's some trickiness in defending the b pawn, but I really doubt it, especially because I might even be able to just give it up like this. So I don't think there's any trickiness like that. I would probably flag this idea with a dubious mark without even analyzing it with the engine. Just looks like a very equal kind of position. Not too crazy. And this, of course, is like very equal because they can just take that off if they want to and finish development, and it's a normal game. So I think CD5 is not difficult in a circle. Welcome. Yeah, thanks for dropping in and liking the video. I imagine you're driving to work, so good luck on your drive. Hopefully it's uneventful. So what else could happen with the c6 move? Well, maybe white could try to play c5 themselves, but I have serious doubts about this because this is not a very active move, like maybe knight d7. And the logical extension of my idea is to play b4 and b5 or something, but I think black can break with e5 immediately. Well, no, not immediately because the queen's there, but start like this. And how are they really preventing all that? Maybe white could go for this. I'm curious about the evaluation here. It says black is slightly better after a5. I mean, go figure. White's not developing any pieces. So maybe this is all kind of silly. But it still says that knight e5 is the best move. Anyway, so that's all to show that b4 is maybe not the best move. It's an interesting move because it doesn't spoil the position. It has an idea behind it, but I think it's a concession to play knight e5. So e3 would probably be more normal. And they might still try this rook e8 thing. But now when I play knight e5, they probably cannot attempt anything like a5 getting active. So this is maybe a more promising version. Let's see. Yeah, so white is kind of better here. I'm going to say slightly better, just because I didn't really let the engine run or anything. But, I feel like it's a good position. So c5, maybe knight d7 is not the way to break it up. Could also be direct b6, or maybe knight d7, e3, b6. I imagine b4 is kind of the response, but well, you could also win a pawn here. So maybe not. Maybe you could just take this. This is different from the other situation because when you take this pawn, the other situation where white's pawn grabbing, um, because white can easily finish their development afterwards, and they're not at risk of losing squares on the queen side after taking the pawn. So I think this is probably winning. I think b6 is a mistake. Quick engine check. Yeah, it's a mistake. Okay, so c5 looks good. What's the engine? I mean, the opening book say. Most people are playing e3 here. Let's see what happens after that. Maybe c5 now. Only one game of c5, and black won that game. I wonder why. That's preferable. So let's just check c5 with the engine. It says knight d7. I don't know. This looks like an unexplored, very reasonable option. Because the engine is showing a similar evaluation for c5. I'm just going to put a note here. That maybe this is something that has to be explored in the future. But that's also like a big aside, like maybe what if. So in the game, they played knight f3 and d takes c4. Queen takes c4. Of course, what else? And knight c6. This position is sort of reminiscent of something. Let me see if I can put together a move order. I think it's similar to this kind of semi-Slav or Slav, where they take and play bishop f5. It has some major differences, though. I wonder if I could set up something reasonable here, like maybe like a reasonable for comparison. Bishop g5. I think e6 would be totally normal and natural. Maybe knight c3. Something like this. How does this compare? Let me toggle a little bit with you guys. All right, so this is after queen takes c4 in the game. Black's bishop is on the inside of the pawn chain. They haven't committed c6 yet, but they have castled. White hasn't played e3 yet. It's going to happen. So what else is like a major difference here? Black's bishop is on the outside of the pawn chain in this move order, but they haven't developed yet. Like, they haven't played out their bishop or anything. Also, they still have their bishop. That's important because in this Nimzo line, the bishop has already given itself. I think this position that we're looking at right now is like close to equal. Like if I flip on the engine, it's showing like zeros pretty much without too much thinking. And if we go to this other position with queen takes c4, it's showing white slightly better. So I think intuitively this is kind of like a slightly worse version of that Slav position that we just looked at. It's not like a totally fair analysis because like this is that opening and here's the other one, but they do arise from similar positions. So I think you could be considering like, am I really going to be playing against? Am I going to be playing this Nimzo position or this Slav position as black? You might be thinking about that. So I don't think it's out of the question to compare the two, and this is definitely not like the best version of that for black, but it's at least close to equal. At least with engine analysis. I mean, to me, it looks like a totally normal kind of position. Anyway, knight c6 is interesting, and this is definitely a distinct opportunity compared to the semi-Slav position that I thought was similar. Vinod, welcome. I'm just going to put a comment here for myself. So knight c6 to me, it looks like they're trying to give the position a more distinct character. Play for something a little bit ambitiously. They could also play, for instance, knight d7, which looks pretty normal, I think. Is there anything wrong with this move? Well, it drops the c-pawn. Okay. This is probably an important detail. I doubt that you can really just sack the pawn like that and go on with your merry life. For example, if I try something like knight b6 to finish my development and maybe sack some more pawns for the initiative, I imagine that this kind of just puts an end to all those ambitions. Excuse me. And it's not even necessary to play it right away. Could also play e3. I don't think I would play e4 with the dark square bishop gone. Yeah, I think this is very good for white. So I think that's a mistake. Like, very simple, just dropping a pawn, no compensation. So I guess the real move to compare is c6. c6 or knight a6. This also looks playable, but I imagine that bringing the knight to d5 might not be that effective, and that's probably the most active square for that knight. Yeah, this is some kind of position. I don't know. Maybe just move on. So knight c6. Probably the most active way of not losing the c-pawn. Queen c3 is an interesting move. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. The main alternative is probably e3 to finish development. I wonder why they're concerned, though. Like, what is actually probably preventing e5? Yeah, I think this is probably what they're worried about. They don't want to enter this position where black has some counterplay all of a sudden. I think black is probably very slightly better. Of course, I don't have to take on e5, but it comes with its own complications. So you might play d5 to avoid. Well, first of all, if you ignore it, let's just pretend we ignore it, right? Maybe you play bishop e2. Then, excuse me, you're going to enter an isolated queen pawn situation. I think this is what was intended. Like, maybe this is our final position. And it might not be the end of the world, at least at a glance. For instance, I might continue with bishop f5 or maybe bishop e6, maybe bishop e6. And they're playing rook d8. You can defend the pawn, but it's not like white is able to play for a win anymore, in my opinion. They don't have a second. Maybe they do have a second weakness. Maybe this combined weakness is enough for black to win the game. But no, I'm looking at Caruana versus Niemann already. Why is it the game of the day? This is that game. I already have it open. I am on top of it. So queen c3, right? Directed against e5, I think. So I think that's why e3 is maybe a dubious move. Although it's a natural move. So this is directed against e5, probably. Rook e8, preparing e5. And now e5 is going to happen. But I still think queen c3 is a useful move, because that queen is also vulnerable on c4. You may as well play queen c3. So here comes rook d1, e5, d5, arguing that the pawn on d5 is better than the pawn on e5. Knight b8, so this move d5 gains some time. And now e3. I think it's important to note that e4 is not the best move, because it's going to make this bishop on f1 pretty poor in the future. So I think this wouldn't be so good. They would probably play a move like c6. No, maybe not c6. This is an interesting moment, because they also could take this pawn, which leaves one wondering, why not? I think it's an initiative thing. Like there could be e4, maybe e4 just for fun. Knight d4 looks like a normal move. It looks like the only move, pretty much. And it's tempting to just play e3 to mess up the structure, but then we are 2 pawns down after this one. We cannot play rook e3 because of queen c8, but we could throw in this one. Excuse me. I prefer white here, really. Let me check the engine real quick, see how this position is. Yeah, white is winning. So this was not a great foray. Yeah, it says white's just better here. So I think this is a dubious move as well. Maybe just a mistake. And this position, maybe we start with knight a6. Okay, yeah. So this is the move order. They can't play queen f4 because there's no pawn on e3 yet. So they'll probably go like here or queen c3. I don't know. And now we can play this and play knight c5. And the knight's coming to e4. Now it's pretty clear to me what we get for the move, for giving 2 pawns. It's going to be a really strong knight. The bishop on f1 is not coming out. This is at least compensation, if black isn't better. And this is pretty much a forced line. So I think queen takes c7 is dubious at best. Anyway, so e4 is not totally nuts in the sense that having the move e4 in play means queen takes c7 is a real threat. But this is probably the time to play c6. If white takes it, then their position makes really no sense. Like, black is probably better here. And if they ignore it, the center is getting open when their king lives there, like maybe like this. Maybe not that. Excuse me. Well, the e pawn is kind of under a lot of attack, so maybe this isn't so good. I was thinking like after bishop e6, they might just go ahead and take this. I think this is maybe good. Let me try one more thing, but it doesn't look promising. You know, they could always do something like this. I don't think the king's in any danger. They're offering a queen trade. They're up material. Not the best. So if it is c6 and they play bishop e2, how would black punish this? If it's not cd5. But Nub was saying that this is like the game of the day. Were you just being figurative, or is it like the game of the day on like ChessBase or something? I haven't checked it. In fact, I haven't even looked at the ChessBase website in like 2 or 3 years. It's kind of funny. I used to look at the ChessBase website every day, but I haven't missed it. All right, maybe we check with the engine real quick just so we can keep moving. It says c6 is the best move. And after bishop e2, it says cd5. Okay. It doesn't like rook d5. Okay, knight c6 first, preventing rook e5. And now bishop e6 is coming. Yeah, this looks like play. Sufficient play. So bishop e2 is not the best move. Maybe I'd want to replace on d5 with a bishop, though. At any rate, the ability of black to finish their development here and leaving white with a bad bishop, I think it's enough to really understand that e4 should not really be the move. But it does seem like it's more interesting than not interesting. Okay, so e3 was chosen. We've already talked about queen c7 and e4, so e3 makes a lot of sense. Bishop f5 is a logical move. Also kind of saying I dare ya. Because when they take here, I imagine that we want to play knight a6 and keep sacking stuff. Like maybe go here, take this, we go here. They go somewhere like... probably even just trade down. Because black's light square control is pretty nice. There is down 2 pawns, that's all. There might be something more precise to do here. Engine suggesting rook ec8. That's not a great sign. So maybe this is too much. I'm not sure. Anyway, I think these first couple of moves make sense. No, I don't know. Queen c6 is annoying, so maybe we need to do something else here. Actually, the knight is protected. I forgot about that. I was like, oh, I need to move my knight. Not true. We could also keep giving more. Just push 'em baby type stuff. Like we just take this. And now black has very, very active pieces. Castling, I don't think it's going to happen anymore. Oh, the bishop is actually attacking e6. See, this is chess morning stuff. Here they're going to play queen a6. In fact, here they can play queen a6. So this is all really stupid. Okay, I'm fairly convinced that this move is a mistake. Let's check the engine. Yeah, it says queen b7, white's better. So, gonna give this a question mark. That was an interesting thought, but it didn't really pan out. Now, knight d7, on the other hand, could be logical. Just in the interest of time, let's see. Yeah, knight d7 says equal. Knight d7, best move, according to the engine. And then rook ec8 with active pieces, equal position. So this is an alternative, but maybe it makes things too easy for black. So bishop e2 was played in the game, more flexible kind of move, also daring black to do something. Knight d7, castle. It's worth noting that this would be a transposition after queen takes c7. Like we just looked at this position pretty much. We could play rook ec8, queen takes b7, and then play ball. That is the same thing. So castling, saying no, just like the Dare program told us, we say no to things like pawns on c7. Black finally decided to protect that pawn, probably to try to break with c6 in a useful way. If you play c6 immediately, you're going to end up with a fractured pawn structure. It's not so good. I think this would be a mistake. Fractured for nothing. Okay, so a4, commencing with our minority attack, I guess. I think. Probably. After all, both sides finish development, and the pawn structure more or less dictates a minority attack for white on the queen side, and a king side attack for black. If they took here, we would see rook takes c6, and this is a lot of activity for black. So even though the pawn structure is now like very symmetrical, black's pieces are better placed. So d6 makes sense to decline entering into that position. Now, when I consider what black should do in a position like this, I see the weakness of the d pawn, and I want to play rook d8, but it does feel a little redundant. I guess the way you can understand the redundancy of playing rook d8 now is that you need to fix the queenside structure to avoid losing the c pawn and giving white a lot of counterplay. So you have to make a pit stop to make them play d6 in order to play rook d8. Rook d8 by itself doesn't really have any purpose until the pawn has been advanced all the way to d6. Anyway, the minority attack continues. a5 also probably makes sense in the light of black hoping to play knight b6 to d5. This would probably be a very successful campaign here for black if they allow it. For instance, let's say you play b4, which looks like it's part of a minority attack, but I think it's a dubious move, maybe even a mistake. I plan to play knight b6, and a5 looks like you're getting tempo towards your continuing minority attack, right? But after knight d5, the queen is hit, the pawn on d6 is cut off, b4 is under attack. You can play queen c4, which is threatening e4. But since black can play e4 with tempo now, because the queens aren't looking at each other anymore, I think what we would have on our hands here is just a lost pawn with no compensation. You could get rid of this bishop, but now that the knight is solidified on d5, the knight is at least as good as the bishop on e2. So I don't think this is really constituting any kind of compensation. So a5 is directed against knight b6, I believe. I was wondering here if black could try bishop e4 in order to play bishop d5 with the similar idea. I'm not sure it works as well because of the move e4 somewhere. For instance, maybe white wants to play knight d2. And now they can play e4 in order to force this bishop to go somewhere undesirable. We don't want to go here because I think after b3 you're trapped. You know, maybe they'll win this one, but at what grisly cost? At what cost? Anyway. So bishop e6 would be the move. And it's kind of a weird journey. Like, why do we go from f5 to e4 to d5 to e6, giving white several useful moves in a row? So it looks really silly like that. You may as well just, come right on back. Just kidding. Don't do that. That's hanging a piece. So bishop g4 makes sense when we compare it with bishop e4 because you can't really play bishop e4 as far as I can tell. Now, next on the docket, h3. Just asking a question to this bishop, like, what are you going to do with your life? But I think we know the answer to that question, right? We saw the bishop doesn't have a future, for example, on e6. And we'd really like to corral this d-pawn. And he just played bishop g4. So probably it's obvious that black wants to take on f3. So when you play h3, you're really just forcing them to do it. Now, what if we just force them to do it without altering our pawn structure? Does this really force them? We're kind of gunning for that b-pawn, but as we've already seen, sometimes we can meet queen takes b7 with rook b8. In this case, I'm not sure, but maybe. Possible. So this bishop's hanging, right? If I back off, let's just say, and we take here, is there any queen trap? I think the answer is no. Because, like, I think if I take here, it might be a yes. Like, no, this is all silly because anyway, this all doesn't really bear explaining. I was kind of curious to see if there was even one line where the queen gets trapped, but you can just take this knight. For example, we go here, and there's like queen a7, queen c7, queen h3, all these moves are playable. So I think rook b8 would be a big mistake. So there's not really any caveat here to queen takes b7 that I can see. What does the computer see? It sees the move. Yeah, it just says that white's winning here. So I think this is a clear-cut mistake. We cannot allow queen b7. So this means we could also take here, and they should really take back, I imagine, with the bishop. e4 could come with tempo now, but then bishop g4, knight e5. Okay, I don't know about this. Wait, e4, I can just take it. Okay, so I think so far so good. Bishop takes f3. How's black going to continue? The b-pawn is hanging for sure. Yeah, this might just be better for white. Let's check the engine. Yes, this white is much better here. So it's suggesting e4, which was the move in my mind, that we should probably give this up in order to play knight e5. But we really want to get that d-pawn for free. So, kind of dubious move. So we're kind of honing in on what must be the only move, e4. I see there's already some computer analysis here that shows e4. I copied this from the live broadcast, which is why it has some game notes already. This is the only move. We can probably trade this off. And how are we defending b7 now? The rook b8 is really passive. b6 maybe. Maybe b6. Well, this would be embarrassing. So we don't do that. We can probably force an exchange here. Doubt Post, welcome. Thank you for following on Twitch. Welcome. So queen c3, we're threatening queen takes c6. I think it's a serious threat. So they might have to deal with it with brutal force. I don't know if I would take with my pawn or with my knight. Knight kind of feels normal. But I might also want to play knight d4 or knight f4. So I don't know yet where it wants to be. It's an interesting question. Yeah, thanks for dropping in for the hey-ah. I know you probably didn't mean hey-ah with that inflection, but I don't know, I like to imagine that you're saying like hey or something. Hey All right, I would probably take with the b pawn just to be bold, because I never do stuff like that. No, not that weird. So yeah, there's that. Could be b takes c3. They'd probably throw this thing on. And we could still play knight f4 to stop knight d3. Seems totally reasonable. I might start like this, just to keep an eye on my own d pawn. But I wonder if it's not lost. Excuse me. So maybe I have to play something like this. Maybe take this pawn right away. So things are kind of fizzling out here with my suggestion. Is this just an equal position? It shows black is better after queen takes, e takes, and c5. Oh no, the engine's changing its mind a lot. It says this is equal. g6, it says it's slightly better. I believe that the d-pawn is weak, but it's probably a little bit intangible at this point. Like, how are we going to win that d-pawn? White will probably get some compensation, attacking the queenside pawns. Anyway, this is an interesting kind of position. b6 looks totally valid. So is queen b4 like an only move for white to be equal? Looks like very close to equal, according to the engine. And this is, oh no, this is not what happened in the game. They played h3, chop chop, taking with the g pawn. I thought for sure this move. So if the bishop takes on f3, what could really go wrong here? It's probably kind of awkward to have a pawn on h3. I wonder how it compares. Let's see in just a second. So let's say we play e4. We've already seen a line where b takes c3 is a-okay, so they might play bishop g4. But I think after knight e5, you really wish that you had bishop h3, and also you wish that you weren't losing your own d-pawn. It's probably necessary to do something like queen a3, or maybe queen b4, to try to keep the balance here. But we're also losing that nice bishop and getting a worse pawn structure. It's showing zeros. This to avoid losing the b pawn, and then queen d4 equal. So bishop f3 seems pretty normal. I wonder what it would be like if white had played some other move and just allowed bishop f3. I guess we could stick with queen b4 because then, I don't know, we've already kind of seen this problem. We looked at this and we saw bishop takes e4 is it. Maybe just for a point of comparison, this is not really a good move, but we could just see a situation where the d pawn isn't dropping and white is not forced to give up this bishop. I think this is still better for black because of knight d3, but it's nevertheless showing zeros because of the threat queen takes b7. I kind of like the bishop on h3. It looks silly, but I like it. Now let's say I play rook d7, because in another line this was good. Well, then the bishop can take it, and white wins. So I think this illustrates why knight d3 is probably the best move here. We saw another line where b6 is playable, but in that line the knight was on d7 to support that pawn. So this is not working either. Interesting for the purpose of comparison. So g takes, weird decision for me. I thought bishop f3 was fine and equal. This is like a I dare you, do something kind of move in my mind. But then again, I think I might also have some bias in favor of the side with the better pawn structure in the case of pawns on f2, f3, and h3. In this very particular case, I think I might overvalue the better structure. I had a game recently where I had this structure with black, and I thought I was much better, and I had actually lost all my advantage when I forced this pawn structure to appear. So, funny situation. Also, same material composition. Okay, going forward, g takes, kind of funny move. Knight f8 is normal, going to like e6 or g6 and pressuring d6 at the same time. Queen b4 protects that, attacks b7. And here we can play rook d7 because there is no bishop on h3. Rook d2 is just building some pressure. And knight g6 engine flagged this as a blunder after the live commentary. So why is this a blunder? Let's figure it out. To me, it looks like a very normal, natural kind of move. I would suggest that it's a case of the missed opportunity because the d-pawn is hanging. But in order for black to capture the d-pawn, they have to give up the b-pawn. And that is a waste. You don't want to lose the b-pawn when you capture on d6 if you're playing for an advantage. Otherwise, you're just trading weaknesses. And I think it's a lot more serious to lose b7 than to lose d6. Just a hot take there. Something in my coffee. Oh well. Yeah, I don't know what is so special about knight g6 that makes it a blunder. It's not obvious to me at all. No doubt the chat was going crazy live at this point, being like, oh, now Hans is going to checkmate Caruana because he made a blunder because the engine said so. But I think that's probably the 3-digit rating people talking. It's not necessarily reality. Just because it's a blunder doesn't mean even the Grandmaster is going to notice it. So rook f d1, the computer criticized this move as well and said that a6 was best. I don't know why a6 is best. It looks like a normal move. I probably have to play b6 which is incidentally threatening c5. So that could actually be pretty useful. Yeah, like what's wrong with playing b6 here? It's just I'm going to play a move. I kind of want to play c5 anyway. Oh, I think I see a problem with it. If c5 doesn't come with tempo, then bishop b5 takes control of this critical light square. In fact, even queen a4 might be good enough. So let's say I just play a normal move. I play this, c5, just to illustrate an idea. Queen a4, threatening to take the rook. They cannot take on d6 because I played rook d1. They also can't take on d6 because of queen takes e8. So I might be able to play something more ambitious than rook d1. Anyway, if they give support, I was going to say I can play bishop b5, but now they have rook d6. So what gives? Maybe I would start with queen c6. With the idea of bishop b5 and queen takes d7. White's king is probably safe enough. Like their pawn structure is kind of bad, but they're safe enough. The Master said my voice sounds kind of funky. Yeah, like bad funky, or I know it's going to be different from normal because I'm using a different laptop because I'm traveling a little bit. I had to make some modifications to my schedule. Yeah, it should be reduced quality because it's just the built-in mic for this other laptop. So sorry about that. As long as you, but I hope that you can hear me clearly. That's the main thing. If it's like bad, like you can't listen to it, just tell me, and I'll have to figure out some other solutions. All right, cool. I'm glad you could hear me. Okay, so here maybe it's queen c6 with the idea of bishop b5. Could be. Just gonna check the engine real quick. It says black is better after knight h4. Okay, I figured king h2. Now what? What's the problem? Okay, so after queen g6, I cannot actually maintain my pressure on d6. That seems important. Like rook g1 to not get mated. And I don't know if I can really afford to play this one because of e4. And now knight takes f3 is happening. For example, queen takes, pawn takes, knight f3, king wherever, and then knight takes d2. That's bad. So I think this is probably the only move. Computer showing queen f6. I mean, why not? Probably queen e6 is good too, but this pressures f3. And after I go back, they could at least force a draw. Okay, so this idea is maybe not as good as I thought it was. The computer's showing king f1 here, and white's better. Interesting. Why can they not take on d6? I figure it has to do with this check, probably. Okay, here I can take on f7 and then a7. So they should probably not allow that. They should probably do this. Yeah, I actually don't think this is... I don't think king f1 is actually better for white, the way the engine says it is. Hello, Shai. Welcome. Shai's becoming our resident chess data scientist in the Discord. I just saw your message about the statistics that you ran overnight. I need to find time to go run some of that code myself. I think I will manage it today, but we'll see. Oh yeah, I forgot. The whole reason I'm streaming in a different place is because I have an obligation at night. So probably not, but next week, hopefully. Okay, so we were just looking at this game where it's Hans Niemann, who's been the butt of many jokes recently, and Caruana. And we were just looking at A6, which looks like a good move, but I'm not sure that this is like a groundbreaking move. It looks like the computer is suggesting B takes A6 as the best move, but I don't see what's wrong with B6. Okay, but I only analyzed after C5, which was unprovoked. Anyway, I think also Rook C1 might be a better move. So let's just look at that move first. This, I think, forces C5. And what's the engine say here? It says Queen E4 zeros. Okay. I was thinking Queen A4. And Queen C6. But here it says Knight H4 and black is winning. Okay. So probably Queen E4 is to prevent Knight H4. Or at any rate, I'm not playing Queen C6 in order to avoid that problem. I'm just following the engine moves here right now. Look at that, E pawn is dead, but then when I take it, they can take on D6. Yeah, it makes sense that this position is showing zeros. So I don't think A6 is that great. If you, so it called this a blunder, right? But I think that if you want to play for a win in a position like this, you might need to play some subpar moves. So when people in the chat are going nuts, like the engine said that Caruana blundered, no, Hans, the beads. Like, I think that it's a case of exploitative play. A6 is a normal looking move, but I think the position really dries up just by looking at a couple of lines. There wasn't that much that really surprised me there, and these guys are a lot stronger than I am. So I imagine they would understand that position pretty well. You need to create a situation where one guy doesn't understand. Okay, Shai is saying that the data that he analyzed suggested that below a rating of 2234 in rapid, I believe, your puzzle rating should be higher than your rapid rating, and then it flips above that. I think that matches my experience. A lot of the time when I tell students to go do some puzzles, they'll end up with a rating that's like astronomically higher than their actual rating. But I also think that the puzzles get much harder at higher ratings. Like they become more like realistic ratings for the puzzles. Probably that's an effect of strong players beating down. No, actually, if strong players are beating down the lower level puzzles, then they should have lower ratings, right? Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. It could be an abundance thing where the ratings of tactics puzzles aren't stationary. Their rating changes as people play them, and it takes time for them to actually spin up to their like real rating. So they might be highly sensitive to initial results in terms of what their ratings end up being. I'm not sure. All right, so Knight H4 was played. Oh, Shai also did an analysis of the average tactics puzzle. The average tactics puzzle or the average tactics puzzle rating? The average puzzle is higher than a player. That makes sense to me because there are going to be positions that are harder that people can typically solve that occur in practice. So, yeah, I think chess is harder than the level of people playing. All right, so Queen G4 is attacking the rook. Rook E6 is attacking D6. So we're looking at the fall of a tyrant here on D6. King f1, knight f5. Let me see. Yeah, the knight's hanging, so they can't take immediately on d6. And anyway, they're just putting pressure on d6. Seems like an automatic good move. Now a6 happens. And black chose ba6. b6 also seems like an option here, but I understand why they might want to take this pawn. Anyway, so that's what they did. I'm not sure it's really the best move, but the computer doesn't criticize it. Let me see b6. Also showing zeros. But I would choose b6 over a6 if I know that they're both zeros. Just the bad pawn structure. Like, how are you gonna play for a win with that? Double the a pawns. At the same time, if this bishop ever gets here in an endgame, that is a light colored square. This pawn is going there, so it might be a conservative move to get rid of that pawn forever, just to avoid any kind of weird right colored bishop situations. But I'm postulating there, not calculating anything. So, in the end, that d pawn is captured. So white is down a pawn, but they have a bishop against the knight. They also have a worse pawn structure. So this position, I would expect it to already be better for black. So let's check and see. Yeah, better for black according to the engine with a very, very cursory analysis. I'm just going to say black is slightly better here. Bishop d3 was played. What would I play here? I kind of want to get my pieces active. The bishop, I don't know. I think it's a long-range piece. I don't know where I want that bishop yet. My rook looks pretty good. Probably shouldn't allow queen takes f3. But I also don't want to defend f3 forever with my queen. So maybe a move like king e2 makes sense, or not king g2 because of maybe queen g6. Yeah, maybe something like this. Not that forcing, so I don't know what black is up to, what they want to play. But it seems good, seems legit. I wonder what the engine evaluation is here. Okay, it says e4, good move. Oh, and then queen takes b2 is on the menu. So that makes sense. We should probably not allow that. So if I don't want to see queen takes b2, I'll just play out that line to illustrate, like if I go here, this is probably a huge mistake because of queen takes b2. Yeah, just a thought. So if I play like queen b4, it might mean that I can play king e2 on the next move. Something like that. Like, I'm threatening to take this knight, right? So if they play here, I'm playing here. Yeah, it just looks winning. They can't protect it any more than they already have. So maybe they could just play an improving move. Like, maybe g6, because if you play king h7, then there's bishop d3 with tempo. I think they want to play bishop d3. You'd have to play g6 anyway, so you may as well play it right away. And now maybe king e2. I wonder if there's any tactical memes here. How's this transformation? Yes, this is an improvement for black. So maybe it's important to avoid this. Let me see if this is the top line. It gives some advantage for black with c5, not bad. But it's also giving like king g7 and e4. These are all reasonable moves, apparently. Okay. So black's betterness is just making itself felt. So maybe we can go ahead with the game. He played bishop d3. G6, of course, what else? And h4, which is apparently a mistake according to the engine. It's not the most active move, but I think it's a logical move. With h4, you're hoping to exchange off one of your weak pawns and maybe create some chances on the king side with h5. Also maybe prevent queen g5, in case that is a useful move. But downside of h4, it's not a very active move. It's in the crosshairs of this queen on f6. And even if you get what you want with h5 and h takes g6, this is creating a pass pawn on the king side for black. And now that we are approaching an endgame, particularly even a heavy piece endgame, I think it's not advisable to play with like h4. So that's how I understand it. But it also leaves us wondering, what else do we play here? Engine suggestion is rook a1, which looks good, but it also looks like a one-move threat. We had been pressuring on the d file for the entire game, so it might be hard to divorce with this idea of attacking the knight, attacking d8. But they've also cozied up to the idea that you're going to have pressure on the d file, so switching targets maybe isn't insane. Something to look out for could be e4. So why don't we look at rook a1 followed by the move e4. If bishop takes, then black would just play knight takes, and I think that's a substantial improvement. So maybe they would take with the pawn. Okay, I'm seeing some ideas here for white too. So let's say queen takes, rook takes. If you do something that's a little bit too slow pokey, like I don't know what's a reasonable slow pokey move. There probably aren't any really, but one thing that might happen here is white could play e5 and then bishop takes g6 to open up the king. Maybe an example of a slow pokey move is rook e8, where you're saying like, "Me, I don't want to deal with your rook a8 check. Wait." So maybe we play e5, and doesn't matter which piece we're taking with here. Maybe queen takes. They can't play queen g7 because of the rook on a7. This looks like curtains, frankly. Maybe they go here. We take this one. They still can't block. They have to go back. Throw this check. And look for the killing blow. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not there. I don't know. We could at least force a draw. Let's see if this is really a draw. Yes, it's queen h6, force the draw. So this could be a saving idea for white. It's not forced. This is just to illustrate an idea that I was thinking of. Like rook e8 looks very silly. I don't know why you would play it. Here it says queen b7. Well, I mean queen b3. I read the evaluation and the queen moved together. Okay, so queen b3 is like what they're suggesting, and there's some traps, I suppose, by allowing rook takes a7. This is definitely the most active that white's position has looked all game, from my layman's perspective, if I can call myself a layman. So they might have to defend with rook e7, which was actually my initial point. This maybe is just the kind of normal-looking position. Like you make a one-move threat and make a one-move defense. Thank you for the follow. Rosebel Gartset on Twitch. Yeah, so maybe they just defend the pawn and we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Like it's a normal kind of situation. What's the engine say? Am I missing something here? Rook a6 and h4. It's changing its mind a lot, but black is still better. So why don't we just go ahead and see about h4. In this position, black shored up with h5, which could lead eventually to a breakthrough on the king side with g5. It's fixing the weakness on h4. Queen g3. King g7, normal move. These are all kinds of moves that showed up in other variations we've already analyzed. e4. Preventing e4, because that was black's idea in several lines. Okay, now queen e7. I guess maybe defending against rook a1 preemptively, potentially preparing to bring a knight or a rook to f6, or maybe even play f5. I don't think you need to think super hard to play queen e7. So queen g5 is chasing them down. Maybe that's why they played it, because they see queen g5 as the idea. For instance, what's another reasonable move here? Maybe knight b7 with the idea of playing knight c5. Okay, let's pretend that this is our move. Then queen g5, and the queen is trapped. They have to acquiesce to an exchange of queens. And maybe black doesn't like that. But at the same time, black is up material, right? 6 pawns against 5 pawns. I doubt that this position is really equal. Like, let's just check and see. Oh yeah, even missing. Again, morning problems. Queen takes f3 is just winning a lot of material. So this is probably not why they play queen e7. But at any rate, queen g5 is now an opportunity that they didn't have before as a result of queen e7. So what would they do to improve their position if it's not queen e7, right? Knight b7 might actually be a realistic move. It's probably better to try to bring it to e6, but that's a bit of a journey there. I meant to d4 or f4. e6 was my idea of like how you would maybe get there. The reason I'm not considering this way to get to d4 is that they could just snap it off. This looks pretty dry. Maybe this is our move. What's the engine thing? Winning for black. I mean, I guess black is just generally better. Let's skip to the part where maybe there's more change in chance. Transferring the queen from f6 to b4 seems like inroads. Useful. Trading queens also seems like it's winning. Here, based on that other line that we looked at, I think knight b5 makes sense. If they don't take it, the knight is going on d4. If they do take it, then we have these pawns running, which is kind of like what we saw in that other side variation. So I think this is probably the way black should go. I'm going to say black is winning here. And this is probably the most simple kind of winning. I think it was around this point that some serious time pressure was being experienced by the two players. Perhaps even bladder pressure, who knows. So naturally, with a5 hanging like a sort of Damocles over the position, white chose to play b4, preventing a5. Very logical move. And now g5. This is an idea that I mentioned earlier to try to create a pass pawn on the h-file. It seems totally normal to me, but the engine criticizes it. It said, play knight b5. It makes sense that g5 won't be good when knight b5 is right there. Like it's a good-looking move. This is kind of like totally the wrong way with the knight. I wonder why Caruana didn't play knight b5. Because to me, it's pretty natural. All right, this is a symptom of time pressure. You're like, I'm going to play a couple moves, play the same move a few times, get some extra time on the clock, because they're playing with, what, 30-second increment in the US Championship? It might even be 90 increment, but I don't think so. I think it's 30 increment. Otherwise, they would not have gotten linearly so well. Okay, now f4. Normal kind of move to muddy the waters. And so far, I'd say this is like a pretty reasonable conversion step. Now knight b5 doesn't make as much sense because with the e-pawn gone, there's no knight d4 outpost, so this going for e3 makes a lot of sense. And this was, I think this is where I started to join live. I noticed people in the chat were going crazy, like, oh, king g2, it's over, no. Niemann, not the goat anymore, or something. Anyway, that's the kind of comments that we were getting. But this move is pretty normal, right? It's like you want to be able to meet knight e3 with king h3 so that you can prevent the tactic that would happen if you had to take with the pawn. If you had to take with the pawn, then there would be rook takes e4. And you might think, like, well, no big deal, we take this pawn, yada yada, but I think it's actually pretty serious. Like, we're taking this one, and now, in general, I think positions where the rook is protecting two passed pawns like this, it's going to be at least equal. If this pawn can reach c3 in that same situation, then it's like winning for black. So this is a big step in the wrong direction if they have to take with a pawn. But after king takes g4, they have serious hopes. After all, both the f pawn on f4 and the h pawn are hanging, and there's no easy way to solve that problem except maybe to generate some counterattack. That might look like rook b5. But fact is, like, they're going to defend this pawn and take one of those pawns, making this much more unclear than before. So it's not like stupid to play king g2. Just because the engine says blunder doesn't mean it's like obvious blunder or illogical move. It's pretty sensible. The engine recommendation is rook a6, which is probably a hard pill to swallow. Because now after knight e3, and I'm just following the game, the analysis from the live broadcast. Knight takes g4 is going to happen. I think this, okay, this is not the line they gave, but I'm pretty sure that this would occur. And here it's saying king f3, it's like pretty close to equal because of rook takes c6 check, right? So now we come back and see why king g7 is a logical move. We keep some flexibility. So when they take on c6, instead of immediately taking the bishop on g4, we can play rook b5. And now there's no way to guard that b pawn. With the strong knight on e3, there's more chances maybe of a checkmating attack. It's less simple. But still, I don't think it's winning the way that you might expect it to be when you see a double question mark move in the analysis. In fact, the evaluation didn't even change that much. Like, if I go here before king g2, it says minus 0.1 with just a cursory analysis. If I do the slightly better one with my regular rinky-dink laptop, it says minus 0.3 after thinking for a little while, minus 0.2 after thinking for like barely any amount of time. So it's somewhere in this like 0.2, 0.3 range, which is a serious evaluation, but not anything to write home about. After king g2, actually it looks like the move suggested by the computer analysis is wrong. When I'm analyzing it with my own computer, it's showing minus 2.7 with rook b5. Instead of, oh wait, sorry. I'm just misreading everything. So it says rook a6 is equal. So that makes sense. This is the equalizing move. So it goes from equal to lost. Okay, that is like a significant mistake. And the move to play is rook b5, which he did play. Rook a4 is necessary. Knight e5 is trying to create that counterplay. And king h3 is pretty logical. It says bishop h3 was better. Maybe difficult to see. Why is bishop h3 better? Maybe we want to maintain the option to play bishop d7. For example, knight d3, saying I'm going to take your b pawn for free. Then maybe bishop d7. This move appears to exchange pieces, because when they take with the bishop, they protect the rook. But I still feel very unsure when I look at things like this. This check looks serious. If king f1, then rook f2, I imagine. Actually, no. So let's say king f1, rook f2. I do the move that I usually do, which is the only legal move. Rook takes f3. This actually runs into e5. But this is probably also winning, actually. This is really funny. You win the rook, but at a grisly cost. Oh no, there's rook takes f4 at the end of the line. Oh no, this is check. Okay, so actually this is fine. Interesting. The weird sequence of moves. So this actually is, in all likelihood, winning. So let's say I play this one. Maybe I would go here. I'm not sure. It looks fine. To me, this looks like black has everything to play for. And white has really nothing to hope for. So, not sure if this is the downside. Let's just quickly check this engine here. Yes, as bishop d7 is the best move, but black is still crushing. It suggests knight e1 instead of rook takes b4. What's its refutation for this? No, it's the same line that I gave, actually. Pretty much. Big advantage. Okay, so king h3. Technically an inaccuracy for the computer, but for the human player, this makes so much more sense than going down in flames with bishop h3. So knight d3 is very serious. So king g5, very normal, natural move. The chat was going crazy at this time, like, oh, he's going to find king g5. And people were like, well, anyone could find king g5. I mean, you have to be ready for rook a5 type stuff, in my opinion. I mean, even this is pretty simple, so I kind of get it. One thing you just have to, be very careful about is that you cannot play like this. You would have to either ignore it, which might leave you in a bit of a tight spot. For instance, maybe you would take this, they would change the pawn structure, and now you have to be sure that this is fine. I mean, obviously it's fine. So, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little too open-minded about this lost position. So, like, I think there are things to think about, is my main point. He had very little time, Caruana, with black, but you should be careful when you think you're winning. And he did win the game after all. So rook a8 was played, like, instantly. Rook takes b4 was played with some slight hesitation, really not much. I think one of the ideas with rook a8 is that after knight takes, you might play rook g8. And maybe you go here, and after rook takes, you have some hope of returning to the game, because rook b4 creates the pass pawn, but you can take this with check, and then they go here and you check, and if they play king f6, you take on f4 with check. And if they go back to h5, you also take on f4, so they'd probably go here anyway. Not there, because you dropped the f pawn. I think you shouldn't do that. And this is like a position where you have a shadow of hope. Like rook f5 looks like an equal position. Let's see what the engine says. Yeah, straight zeros on a cursory analysis. So you do have to be wary. You can't play a move like knight takes g4. That just illustrates one of the ideas behind rook a8. And if black does nothing, then there's also rook g8 or rook h8. Now in the game he played rook h8 after rook takes b4, and it's the best move according to the engine. Again, just like quickly flicking it on and off. Nothing serious. Rook h5 is a pretty good move, precise move. I might give it an exclamation point just for resisting the temptation maybe to take on h4. White really has the h-pawn in hand. So what they need to do is start creating lots of threats. And in the next couple of moves, you'll see White did exactly that and was able to get a drawn position, but then they botched it. Rook b5 is a kind of weird move. They should probably start rolling this pawn. This makes a lot more sense to me. But they're also worried about moves like this. At the same time, if I play king e6, what are you really going to do with your discover attack? I can take on g4 when you play it. So here, if I flick on the engine, it says rook takes f4 check is the best move, but the knight takes g4 just kind of ends it. Like here, this might be a sample line. I don't know if I should take with the rook or with the pawn. I imagine I should take with the rook. And I think we just keep pushing this pawn. Maybe add rook b3 in there, but like it's very clear to me that this is winning because black is really pushing ahead. They're close to playing c3 and rook c4, which is lights out. If they play a move like e5 to try to pin this pawn, then I can play king takes e5, and they might have more problems to worry about. So rook b5, very timid move in time pressure, in my opinion. But he might have seen something that I didn't see. I'm just kind of going through it in a relaxed sort of way, not like in time pressure the way he was. So rook f5, check, king e7. Maybe he just wanted to play it safe and like not have to think about any fancy rook moves after king e6. But I dare say, even in this position, can you play king e6? Again, like wherever you put that rook, the only double check is rook takes e5, and I can play king e5. So I think this is even still perfectly fine. The fact that he played king e7 shows me he was really worried about this discovered attack. Otherwise, I think you would prefer to go forward somehow. Bishop h5, again, a good example of how white is putting the pressure and the heat on black, even with reduced resources. They're attacking everything that's weak on the board. They're attacking f4, they're attacking h4, they're attacking f7, they're attacking e5. They even have an eye on b5, although probably they don't want to take on b5 because that would lead to an outside pass pawn. And until they can take care of this h-pawn, they can't bring their king to defend that pawn. It's very far away. Plus, the black king is halfway there. So if they just reduced all the material, black would still win. So white is playing for some kind of activity, not necessarily trading to the endgame and like a fortress draw. Knight g6 was an unusual move because he probably wants to force rook takes b5, but rook takes f4 is what they're going to play, like no matter what. They can't play c5, so it's understandable that they might make a mistake here. Like, what else can you really do? Maybe you would try knight d3, because this move protects f4, offers an exchange of pieces. What could go wrong here, right? Well, first of all, I really don't think you can do this, as mentioned. I think you need to get this bishop going somehow, but the bishop's pretty much trapped. It's putting pressure on f7 when the rook is on the board, but when there's no rook on the board, it's kind of just stuck. So I don't know how you're going to bring this back. Maybe you go here. This looks like it's barely in time, because when they play b2, you can play bishop takes d3, but they can also play knight b4. So I think this is lost. You can't play bishop d3, and you need to get in touch with that square. So maybe something less silly. Maybe something like this. Or even starting with e5. My idea here is that if they play b3, I play e5. If they play b2, I play bishop takes d3. And if they play something more clever, I at least have an eye on that square, b1. This to me looks like there's really a hope of a draw. You know, they could take this pawn, but I'm going to play this one. They can play this to try to snatch that bishop. I don't know, the chances of a draw are pretty slim. Like, yeah, I think this is actually still lost, because you cannot ever take the pawn or the knight. Your bishop can't move. This is over. So, yeah, maybe there is just no way after you trade rooks, which was sort of what I was getting at in the first place. It was more interesting than I thought for a second. Yeah, Master, there's also that problem. After bishop f5, there's also king f6. That's sort of nipping the whole thing in the bud. The reason I went down that line is just to see if my idea works at all. I don't think it works. It's also preventable. You're right. So big problems there. So knight d3, what? It's definitely not rook takes b5. This is a move that I was showing just to illustrate that it's not good. I think rook f7 is necessary. King e6, therefore. And rook c7. This could be progress. Well, no, the bishop's hanging, actually. This doesn't look at all like a draw. Thank you for following Sean Pinto on Twitch. All right, so the fact that knight d3 is running to rook f7. Well, first of all, let's check with the engine just to make sure. There are surprises. It says equal. Oh no, here rook takes h5. Yeah, equal with rook h7. Right, I forgot to mention that. They don't have to drop a bishop. So if this is equal, it shows that knight d3 is a step in the wrong direction. We could play king e6. And maybe they'll still take this. And then we can play this because the bishop's hanging. Hello, Sean. Yes, I do stream on YouTube as well. I'm actually live on YouTube right now. All right, so knight d3. I mean, they could save this bishop like whatever way. You know, I could take on f7 maybe. And now we're cooking with rice or something, because white has things to play for and black hasn't made any progress. It's unappealing to look at a position like this. So I guess I understand maybe where they're coming from. What's the engine say about this one? King e7, winning for black. Why does it even suggest that? Oh, okay, it's trapped. That's funny. Little attack the defender thing going on here. The rook's hanging, the bishop's hanging. So they're just moving, like they're just losing a piece here. Very funny. I like king e7. Good little tactical moment. You know what's funny? When I'm analyzing this game that Niemann lost, I find a lot of interesting variations as I'm looking at it. The other day, I did a stream where I looked at several of Niemann's games where he has 100% accuracy according to the chess base um, computer accuracy metric. And I found that it was very difficult to find anything interesting to say about his moves in those games. It's like everything just kind of seems very normal and natural somehow. Very little criticism to actually share. But in this game, I just have like endless things to say. So, strange observation about this game where there's a two-sided conflict and the game where it's just a 100% accuracy smackdown. There's a lot more to say about a game that's not computer approved, at least for someone around my level. So knight g6, computer flags it as a mistake. I think it's a very understandable mistake. But also, if you see that you're losing your f pawn and your h pawn, why not just go all in? Knight g6 seems like you are hoping for a draw by going into the rook endgame. Now, f4 was a funny moment. They were both playing very quickly at this time. I thought that the most normal thing to do is play rook g2. And white is holding a draw, I think. If I check with the engine real quick, it's showing black is better. With a quick analysis, when I give it a little bit more firepower from my PC, it shows like a -1 advantage in the rook endgame. But it's kind of dwindling. Hard to say. This is a position where it could easily become a draw because it's a rook and pawn endgame. If the only move here for black is rook c5, that's a good sign. Let's pretend that they do something more ambitious, like king e5. Rook takes g5 is a draw already. After rook g6, equal. We're just trading too many pawns. So they can't activate the king. Now let's say they play c5. And check with the engine a little bit better. It's showing like -1-ish. Somewhere between like 0.6, 0.5 right now, and like 1. Rook c2 is the most obvious move. And defending the pawn from the side is not optimal. You'd rather have your rook behind the pawn. If you've seen my recent series with Sam, where we're just giving her a speed run of how you get better at chess by yourself, we did a lesson with rook endgames recently. You can look it up. A lot of people really liked it. And I talk about how the rook should be behind the pawn. So for more information about that, just check out the Chess Degen training with Sam on my channel. There's a whole playlist for it. And this is a good example, right? The rook next to the pawn is not the best placed here. And I think there's a lot of potential counterplay for white. So rook g2, I think, is what you really have to do. Even if black is better, this is how you should pose resistance. Like, don't let that pawn advance. Don't let them activate the king. Material doesn't matter that much in the rook endgames. Now, f4. This is leading to your e-pawn becoming a weakness. I think you're going to need that pawn to create counter chances. Also, giving them the e5 square and getting rid of their weak g-pawn doesn't make a lot of sense. So this seemed like amateur hour to me. I didn't like it. Another thing that was really funny is after this, after rook b3, which is much better for black, you'll see why in the sidelines. You play king h2 because, of course, what else? And then rook b2 is a blunder. The reason, you guys will see, it's kind of funny. They should really activate their king. So let's say we take, and they take, and we play king e5. You would like to play a move like rook f6 to get behind that pawn right now, but you can't. So you probably play something like this. And now, when I play c5, your king is so far away and so cut off, you're not going to stop this c-pawn. It's just running. Like, I'm pretty sure if I flip on the engine, oh, here it says that it's a draw. Guess I missed it. Rook endgames are difficult. I was thinking king d4. Oh, right, here, I don't want to play king c4. That's true. So maybe not c5 right away, but start with king d4 to avoid that. Okay, but now the pawn is really running. So it's easy to go wrong, but I think this is not a hard move to find. c-pawn's coming down. Another move that came to my mind that might be good. I don't think it's good right now, but generally you might like to play a move like this. My qualm with this particular move is that there's no good way to defend the c-pawn at this point. Now if we play c5, rook h5, king d4, rook d5, king c4, king g2, this is looking a lot more drawish because they need to bring the king in front of the pawn. You know, we might see something like this, trying to get behind the pawn, but maybe 2 can play that game. I don't know. I think I should play rook d7. I can always switch to trying to check from the long side in a second, depending on what they do. Okay, so king d4 is the best move there. G takes f4 is how you capitalize. Rook b2 is funny. So this is a good moment to pause if you're watching a replay or if you're watching right now. I mean, you can't pause me. I mean, you could try, but you can't pause me. What should white play? How does white draw this position? And what's the most logical move? Like, why should we do things a certain way? We already know that black wants to play a move like e takes f4. What's the optimal place for our king in such a situation? It turns out that we should play king g1. When I was watching live, I was thinking he would play it, that like he'd escaped. But in reality, he played the move king back to h3. Now, this also shows us a double question mark blunder for the engine. But think about yourself in this position. You played f4. King g1 is not that surprising, in my opinion. Like, if check out the Dvorsky endgame manual, rook endgame section. There's a lot of that kind of backward king move, tucking the king in the corner when it's the best place kind of stuff. You'll see more examples like this. But let's say that you're in Hans's position, right? People in the chat were joking that maybe his batteries are dead at this point. But jokes aside, you just played f4, and things are not looking so good. You're like, oh man, I'm in time pressure. I played a bad move, f4. Black is trying to play g takes f4. They could have done it last move, and instead they played rook b2. There's a chance, therefore, that your opponent didn't even notice that the move g takes f4 is good. So as long as you play your cards right, you could think for a little while about what you really want to do if they fail to repeat. But play king h3 as a bluff, because maybe because of the time pressure, he really just wants to get a draw and get out. So you play king h3 for that psychological edge. It makes sense, even though king g1 is a draw. In time pressure, such practical decisions occasionally, reap benefits. So king h3, even though it's a double question mark move because it's not king g1, it's a very reasonable move to keep them in the pressure. Yeah, this was severe time pressure. I think Caruana had like less than a minute left. So let's look at king g1 and how this might be a draw, right? First of all, it's kind of a step in the right direction towards the queen side. And if you want to make progress here as black, you need to play gf4. Because if you play c5, then rook takes g5, you are at serious risk of losing the game. I think it's already potentially better for white. Okay, it's equal. Rook c2. That is a big improvement for black. So gf4 really should be done, right? Take, they go here. Check. If they play king takes e4, then there is rook c5. Very important move. They have to defend the pawn. And now this is a draw. Maybe you could even play rook h5 here. Let's check with the computer a little bit. Actually, no. It says black is winning. Interesting. So here I thought it was winning. Interesting. Okay, so where's the draw? First of all, by the way, guys, I haven't analyzed this ahead of time. This is just my analysis live on stream. And rook end games are hard, so there are going to be some funny, interesting lines here. So I already looked at this. Here I thought this would be a draw. So what's the winning technique real quick? Probably this. Right. King h2 is not very sensible. I thought maybe I'd go here. King f3 defends the pawn tactically. Because if you take here, this threatens mate. That's a nice little finesse. So this is like more logical, but it fails to a very nice move. King f3. Okay, so this typical kind of blockading idea doesn't work. Rook f5, actually a mistake. But I think you can probably employ a very similar strategy. Like you take this first, which makes sense because you don't want to give up the e-pawn so easily either. I think they'll want to play c5, but now after rook h5, king d4, rook d5, king c4, king f1, we are potentially in the drawing zone. I think so. Let's check and see. Yeah, it's showing zeros. For example, rook h2, rook g5, draw. They have lost some time because they had to put their king in front of their pawn. It allows us to bring our king over and force the draw. We want to keep the king in front of the pawn. So rook takes h4, better. c5, not good. So they should play king d4. I think what we need to do in this situation is run our king over here, but we also need to be careful about mate threats along the way. Probably it's too early to play like rook h6 and rook c6. We don't need to get behind that desperately. I think king f1. And luckily, whenever they play a move like king e3, we can just check them away. I think this should be fine. Like we check, they probably will take this one. We go here, and this looks like a draw. I'm a little bit unsure, actually. Should probably keep it Philidor-esque, where we stay on the side and wait for them to advance. Yeah, this is equal. Okay, let's see. Did we miss any one-mover type things along the way? King e1. Give this check. They take. Go here. Okay, yeah, this is a fine variation of what we just looked at. Engine approved. Okay, so this is why rook b2 is a blunder, and this is kind of funny. People were like screeching in the chat, like, rook b2, awful blunder. Caruana, how could you? Yes, Niemann the GOAT. So, king h3, more of a psychological play, a quick move. King g1 was where it's at. And they interestingly never returned to that position. So the bluff didn't work. Caruana managed to get a little bit of extra time, even though his move was a blunder. And then he transposed to the correct way of playing, which is with king e5 and rook e3. Rook e3 is not the best move. It should be king d4. And I believe the best move here is something like e5, just to avoid a pathetic loss. But even this is hopeless, so no need to analyze it. I think this is also like some time pressure, quick moving, because he wants to just take the pawn and then win the king and pawn endgame. But after rook h6, he does have to just, put the rook right back there. So it was a bit of a move where he's saying, I know that you're going to defend this accurately, but I get 30 seconds for playing it quickly. It's really at no risk because this position is still winning for black. Mainly because the white king is too far away. Now king takes e4, material advantage and everything. Rook d6, cutting off the king, but like white's king is also cut off. Rook e6 is not helping. And you could already resign around here. This is something that we see in endgame textbooks. And he resigned because everybody has seen how to win with the Lucena position. And in case anyone's never seen this before, the way that you would win in a situation like this, where you cannot move your king, first of all, push it to the limit. You know, just get that pawn rolling. And if they're just waiting, eventually you are going to check them away. And lift the rook to your 4th rank. And then kind of duck and tumble out the back. You do this little zigzag where you always keep in touch with the pawn while it's under attack. But at the critical moment, when they check your king and the pawn's not under attack, you get as close as you possibly can so you can block with your rook. And now there's no way that they can survive. Let me just put a note here. This was not how the game actually went. They resigned here. Okay. So, yes, a little bridge building activity. Thanks, Yeater Master. I'm glad that this was pretty interesting, as opposed to the rest of my streams, which are just, you know, whatever. Okay. I think this is probably enough for now. I like this game a lot. It was very interesting to me. I have a lot of other games to look at, and hopefully we can see some more games that speak for themselves in future sessions. I have plenty of them lined up. We have a couple people here on Twitch today, so why don't we do a raid? Any suggestions, guys, for who to raid? Let me see if anybody I know is online. Whipping out my phone here. But yeah, suggest away if you have something. I don't want to raid any of these like big people that I don't care about. Is there really like nobody streaming right now? Yeah, there's not a lot of chess in the world at the moment. Let's raid just the smallest Twitch person who's playing chess. All right, hold on. Prepare for the raid. And if you're on YouTube and you can join Twitch so we can raid them, feel free. That'd be cool of you. Alrighty. What's this person's name? Already. 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 Alright, thanks for coming in, you guys. Thanks for really appreciate you guys. 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 You guys. Thanks for really. All right, thanks, guys. Take care.